Welcome. So we are moving on to the black commons and uncommons. This is the full set review for Edge of Eternities, black commons and uncommons, and here we use the Scuffle review system. So I'm sorry if you are hearing this for the fourth time now, but I put it at the beginning of each one. So a 1 is a card that you will never play. A 2 is a card you should try not to play. A 3 is replaceable. 4s are solid. 5s are strong. 6s are cards that you should play in a given color or deck pretty much every time. 7 is a card that will pull you into a given color or deck. 8 is a card you'll have to do some work to play, whether it's a splash or changing your deck around. 9 is change. You are doing this now. It's just that good. It's very rare. And a 10 is a card you will always play no matter what. 10s are very rare. In addition to the average value, I'll also give you a floor, that's the worst a card will be, a ceiling, that's the best a card will be, and an amount of effort required to bridge that gap. That'll include build-arounds or synergy grades or sideboards or diminishing returns, anything that is affected by the rest of your draft. We're going to go do a quick overview of what each color pair wants to do, and then we'll talk about what black as a color wants to do as we go. Blue-black artifact control, it's really just blue-black control, but there's a lot of payoffs for being a control deck. You need your bombs first. You need the cards that win you the game when they come down, or at least provide a huge amount of advantage. Usually they're going to be rares. There's a lot of rares, and you'll need them. I don't think you can be blue-black control without rares in your deck, but you really only need 1 or 2 because it's very good at digging for the powerful cards, and it's very good at recurring them once they're gone. Even blue has some recursion for artifacts specifically. So bombs first, then removal, starts to sound a lot like bread, then evasion. Evasion is how you apply enough pressure that your opponent has to kill things, and it's also a good plan A if you don't have your bombs yet, or plan B. I consider Alfariel to basically be evasive. It draws cards, and then it's got more or less unblockable. Your opponent has to sacrifice something to kill it. And then finally, card advantage. There is a lot of card advantage available. In blue-black specifically, the best raw card draw spells in the set are blue and black, as they usually are, but there's twice as many in both as usual. There's way less incidental card advantage. There's way fewer cards that are like, when this comes into play, draw a card. When this creature comes into play, return a creature from your graveyard to your hand. So raw card advantage is inherently more valuable, both because of the amount of time games will take and because of the rarity of it, the scarcity of raw card advantage. So blue and black both have it, a lot of colors just don't. As you draft, try and think about how you're using your graveyard, or if you're using your graveyard at all. There's ways to pick up creatures or artifacts or stations individually, but not too many of them. But there's a lot of looting and milling and surveilling. So you don't want to value those cards as high if you're not picking up any recursion ways to use your graveyard. Figure out how you value your flyers. The fewer bombs you have, the worse your bombs are. The more you have to value the flyers themselves. There's a few very good ways to grow flying creatures, or creatures who can win the game on their own, but you need to figure out how valuable those are to you as you draft. And they're cool. We'll talk about some of the black ones. And figure out if you have to attack to win. So like blue has a few finishers that will mill someone out at the end, and are you attacking every turn, or do you need to leave the blockers back? So figure that out as you go, and your deck will look a lot better. So up next, red-black Void, aka Sacrifice. So Void as a mechanic says at the beginning of your end step, if a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn, or a spell was warped, which means a non-land permanent will, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. It's just a trigger. Void as a whole is not free to activate, but it is pretty easy if you put in effort. The cards that trigger Void for free will end up being fairly valuable. So in your black-red Sacrifice deck, you need your win cons first. Black-red is so good at grinding value, but you need to have the way you win the game first. Then you need your value cards. Interceptor Mechan is a very good piece of value. Then you need your fodder. Interceptor Mechan is a very good piece of fodder. And then you need your removal. Interceptor Mechan does it all. It's a 4-mana 2/2 that picks up a creature or artifact and flies and grows. The great ways to sacrifice your permanents are very rare, but there's a lot of okay ways to sacrifice them, and you don't need the good ones if you have enough of the okay ones. All of the weak cards in black-red can be made good with some work, but you can't put work into all of them, so you need to decide where you're putting your work, both in picks and in gameplay. Black-red has the most flexibility of game plans. So like you can do the steal and sack thing where you borrow a permanent, attack with it, like you threaten it, and then you sacrifice it post-combat. And then there's a spacecraft plan. The spacecraft in red and black are all kind of weird, but you are good enough at crewing them because of the warp mechanic. You can do it pretty well in red black. You can just do the mid-range thing where you're pivoting, trying to decide whether you're attacking consistently in the air or on the ground, or holding out and killing what your opponent's doing. You can grind a game out. There's so many cards like Interceptor Mechan. Interceptor Mechan can return Interceptor Mechan. If you have 2 copies of them, you can block forever or attack forever. Or you can do an Aristocrats thing. Red and black both have a whenever a creature enters or dies, deal some damage, so you can put them into play, put a bunch of things into play, sacrifice them all, and you'll win the game that way. But committing to a plan early is very valuable. So like, if you have a bunch of threatens early, then you can do the steal and sack thing, because you can find the sacrifice outlets, but not the steals. The steals are a rarity. So actually, we're going to talk about this. So in steal and sack as a game plan, threatens are rare, sacrifices are easy. So you need to value the threatens highly. In the spacecraft plan, the spacecraft themselves, the good ones, are rare. If you see them going late, you can do the spacecraft thing. Mid-range requires rare and pretty high value flexible cards. So I think you need actual Interceptor Mechans or other cards we'll talk about as we get to. The grind plan requires the card draw spells in black specifically. There's 2 of them. You need a lot of them, and it works pretty well. The Aristocrats plan requires uncommons, specifically the Blood Artist variant and the red warp equivalent. So on to green-black graveyards. There's not a lot you can do with graveyards general, but you can use it as a pretty powerful card selection tool. It's very easy to mill and surveil and discard cards into the graveyard. Getting them back is difficult. And even if you're a green-black graveyards deck, you really don't want to be too dependent, because the grave hate is present and strong, and people are just going to have a lot of incidental ways to deal with your graveyard. So use it as card selection rather than dumping things in the graveyard and trying to win that way. So when you're doing green black, it's just green black good cards. It's not really a graveyards thing, but you need your power first, and then you need your recursion. You still need recursion even if you're not doing the graveyard thing, because so many of your creatures you want to be able to play twice or pick things up as needed. Then your mill and surveil. I should change mill. It's your card selection, and then removal. There's just so much good green and black removal that you need it, but you can pick it a little later because of how powerful it is and how much there is. You need card selection over card advantage. Your rares are extra strong because they come back so much, and there's not very much inherent synergy. It's just good in general. And then finally, black white go wide. So this is Servandum the Lucent. This card is really good. The hardest thing to find in the go wide decks is token generators, things that make multiple bodies. So you need your tokens first, things that are worth more than 1 body at a time. The inherent power of a go wide strategy is that when I play something like Servandum, I'm giving +2/+0 instead of +1/0. So I need things that make multiple bodies first. Then I need the power card. Servandum is a very good example of that. Then I need the Anthem. Servandum is a very good example of that. And then finally removal. You can make pretty much any of your removal spells work in the token strategies. Between black and white, there's a lot of available removal spells, and in a lot of these color pairs, you really want one removal spell or over another. But in the go white token strategy, just about all of your removal is going to feel pretty equal. You can make any of them work. There's way fewer tokens available than usual. So there's only 2 cards in white that make multiple bodies, and there's a couple in black, but they tend to have to die for it. So you have to really value the things that make multiple bodies if you're doing the go wide thing. You can do just like black white mid-range, but if I'm doing that, I'd usually rather be green unless I have something as powerful as Servandum. And the anthems are really good. So there are very powerful ways to pump your team like Servandum, but there's weak ways to pump your teams that are still going to be fine. You don't necessarily have to pick up the best anthem effects, because the weak anthem effects are still going to be fine. All right. And then finally, before we get into the black cards, there is something you should know about. There is an infinite combo available below rare, and it's good. It's made up of good cards mostly. So the combo is you play Umbral Caller Zealot. This is the only repeatable sacrifice outlet for free mana. So you need the Umbral Caller Zealot. There's no replacement for that. And there's lots of replacements for Voidborn, but this is the only one in this color. So you have anything that triggers when a creature comes into play or dies, like the Voidborn, and then 2 Peregrine Beckoners. And Peregrine Beckoner is when this creature enters until end of turn, another target creature you control gets +2/+0 and gains when this creature dies, return it to the battlefield tapped and under its owner's control. So if I have a Peregrine Beckoner in play, let's say I cast it on turn 5, turn 6 I can play the Umbral Caller Zealot, warp the Peregrine Beckoner, target the other Peregrine Beckoner, sack this Peregrine Beckoner, then it comes back because of the Beckoner and targets the other one, and then you just go back and forth. So without a Voidborn in play, you get to surveil your whole deck if you need to dig for something specific. With a Voidborn in play, or the red equivalent that pings whenever a creature comes into play, you get to deal infinite damage. And I normally wouldn't bother with a 4-card infinite combo, except surveilling infinite times is still pretty good. And all of these cards, so Umbral Caller Zealot is fantastic alone. It's something that you just want in black. Voidborn is a build-around kind of card that's kind of weak on its own. But the Beckoner is solid. I think that this is a combo you will see and is worth building towards. I also think mono black is viable. I think any of monocolored deck is viable. We'll see a lot of like mostly green with a little bit of black or a little bit of blue, but you can do this combo, and I think it's worth trying to do this combo. Nobody else really wants the Beckoners. Some people will want the Voidborn, but this card's kind of weak on its own. Everybody wants the Zealot. The Zealot is one of the better black cards, and it's the only way to do this on demand as much as you want. So if you have a Zealot, you can go for the combo. Onto the cards. Our first one is Beamsaw Prospector. 1 in a black for a 2/1 human artificer. And when this creature dies, create a lander token. This is good. We see this effect a lot. This is a common card we see in most sets. A 2-mana 2/2 or 1/2 or 1/1 or 2/1 that dies to make the set mechanic in black. And the set mechanic is just very good in this format. Dying into a lander means your opponent doesn't want to trade with this. Means you can sacrifice it on demand to pick up a land when you need to. And if it made junk, if it had no text, that would still be something that a lot of the black decks want. If you never sacrificed your lander, you would still be okay with the Prospector. You would still be okay with the artifact it made. It's just black wants rectangles, and there's not a lot of rectangles. So I gave it a 5 with a floor of a 3 and a ceiling of a 5, and it's going to be pretty low effort. We're assuming you have some ways to sacrifice this later, or at least utilize the lander, and you should have some ways to sacrifice this and or utilize the lander. Blade of the Swarm, 3 in a black for a 3/1. When this creature enters, choose 1. Put 2/+1/+1 counters on this creature, or put target exile card with warp on the bottom of its owner's library. So tucking a warp card is not something you want to do often enough to make this feel worth it. It happens, and there's rares with warp that you just don't want to resolve ever. Which makes this a great sideboard card. I think this is a great card in best of 3 in general. I think I'll be splashing this card in best of 3, but because with landers, but inherently in main deck, I don't usually want this because 4 mana 5/3 is going to trade down, and a 4 mana 3/1 is going to trade down. Even if you get to take out a warp card, that's not worth a whole card a lot of the time. Some of the rares drew cards already, but it has a place. Like, it's fine. This card is fine. I gave it a 3 average with a floor of 3 and a ceiling of 5. It's pretty high effort. There's a lot of warp, but even if you taking out a warp card has to feel really worth it. All right, Comet Crawler, 2 in a black for a 2/3 insect horror with lifelink. Whenever this creature attacks, you may sacrifice another creature or artifact. If you do, this creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So this is what I was talking about when I said the okay sack outlets are plentiful. A 2/3 lifelink for 3 is solid without being great. it's gonna hit that ceiling of a 5 when you want to sacrifice things. There are things you actively are looking to sacrifice, especially if you're stealing them from your opponent, and there's better sack outlets available. But this one is a stabilizing force. Occasionally, you will just want to attack as a 4/3 to break through, but most of the time, this is a 2/3 that sacrifices something because you need to trigger your void, or just have something go to the graveyard on demand. Cool card, something that I have to want, but even if I don't take it because I want it, it's going to do its job most of the time. Comet Crawler, I gave a 4 with a floor of 4, ceiling of 5, medium effort. Dark Endurance, 1 in a black for an instant. The spell costs 1 less to cast if it targets a blocking creature. Target creature gets +2/+0 and gains indestructible until end of turn. So, we need to talk about combat tricks on defense. It's really difficult to use a trick like this when you're blocking because your opponent is going to have mana up. In a usual game of Magic, you make your attacks and then cast your spells during main phase 2, which means your opponent with cards in hand versus you with cards in hand will always have more options than you. And not too long ago, they changed how blocking works, which means your opponent gets to rearrange damage however they want. You don't get to play Dark Endurance after blockers are ordered. You have to play it, and then if you're double blocking and you use this on the other one, then they can just kill the other blocker. So it's hard to make this lethal against something gigantic, and even if they're only attacking with something small, you have a huge risk of being blown out as a 2-for-1. That being said, indestructible on an instant is something that some decks just want. Some decks just want to be able to keep a creature alive through a removal spell because that creature is important enough. So if you have creatures that are important enough to keep alive with Dark Endurance, then go for it. Overall, I'm not happy playing this card in combination with other black cards, but green-black, I do think gets a lot out of this. They just have a better option in green, but I was going to have it. Pretty weak, but playable. This card is dangerous. Like, this is a format where, like in Final Fantasy, if you got blown out on a chocobo kick, if you tried to chocobo kick your creature to their creature, and they killed it in response, you were out 2 cards, and it felt bad, but it wasn't a game loss. You could actually come back. But then if you could play Traverse the Overworld, draw 4 cards, and then one of those could be another Traverse. But in this set, that's so much more difficult to do. You don't have unlimited combat tutorials, so getting blown out on a bad combat trick can be a game loss. I think it's more dangerous than usual. I like that it's a protection spell when you need a protection spell, but I don't want to have to need this one. I gave it a 3 overall with a floor of 3 and a ceiling of 4, medium effort required. Up next is Decode Transmissions. 2 in a black for a sorcery. You draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. Void. If a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn, or a spell was warped this turn, instead you draw 2 cards and each opponent loses 2 life. Draw 2 cards, lose 2 life is something we see a lot in black. In other limited formats, you will almost always play the first copy, but not the second or even the third, because you can't fit that much in. If you cast 3 copies of the spell, you're out 6 life. Yes, you're plus 6 cards, but if you had to spend 3 mana each time, then you weren't putting enough on the board, and your opponent's going to get you back. The Void, even I would still be happy playing this if the Void made it so that I didn't lose the 2 life. But the fact that my opponent loses the 2 life means you can't, like, if you have the ability to trigger Void every turn, you can keep casting this. I gave this a 5 average with a ceiling of 5 because it's going to be at that ceiling of 5 if you can gain a lot of life or if you can trigger the Void. You don't have to be able to do both. One or the other is enough to make this card strong. You want to avoid paying on turn 3, you can pay 2 life to draw 2 cards. Other than that, I think you want to avoid it as much as possible. But the longer the game goes, the easier it is to trigger Void as long as you built your deck to do so. Great card if you can trigger Void reliably. I'll play 3 or 4 3-mana draw 2, my opponent loses 2 life. Not 3 or 4, I lose 2 life. I like this card. I think it's a very good comment. Depressurize. 1 in a black for an instant. Target creature gets -3/-0 until end of turn. Then if that creature's power is 0 or less, destroy it. We see 2 mana give a creature -3/-3 all the time. There's not a lot of creatures that are 3/4s. There's a few 3/4s, but not enough to make this better than give a creature -3/-3. But giving a creature -3/-0 is a terrible combat trick. Destroying a creature with power 3 or less is usually a very good removal spell, but this is competing with a lot of other very good removal spells, and it doesn't hit a lot of what you really need it to hit. So it's still a removal spell it's still a strong removal spell. Destroy target creature with power 3 or less is worth play and still strong enough. But I'll side this out against a lot of green decks, and there's a lot of removal spells I will be taking over this. So I gave it a 4 average with a floor of 3 and a ceiling of 5. I don't like it when you can counter my removal spell with any pump spell, and already it's not hitting most of what I needed to hit. It hits a lot of the signpost uncommons, and removal is good in this set. Removal is not good in every set. It's good in this one. This one's controversial. I think I'm way lower on this than other people. I think it's even lower than this as I looked at the other cards. If green is really the best color, this card's pretty bad. Here, this is one of the better removal spells in this set. Dubious Delicacy. 2 and a black for an artifact food with flash. When this artifact enters, up to 1 target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn. 2, sacrifice this artifact, you gain 3 life. 2, sacrifice this artifact, target opponent loses 3 life. This is so good. This is a removal spell that triggers your Void on demand, plays into double spells, plays on your opponent's turn, drains them 3 life if you need it to, or gains life when you need it to. It's so flexible. It stays in play and does what you need it to do. Having a Void trigger on demand is a valuable thing as well. This is a powerful card. Strictly better than Depressurize. Costs 1 more mana, but lots of relevant types. There are a lot of ways to pick up artifacts from your graveyard. So it recurs even. It's comparable to Nowhere to Run in Duskmourn in terms of power level. It's just flexible and strong. I like it. I gave Dubious Delicacy a 6 with a floor of 5, ceiling of 6, low effort. If this had no other text, when this artifact enters up to 1 target, you get -3/-3 until end of turn, I'd still be very happy to play it, even without the sacrifice abilities, even if it wasn't flash. Embrace Oblivion. Black mana, 1 black mana for a sorcery. As an additional cost, cast a spell, sacrifice an artifact or creature, destroy target creature or spacecraft. So this is not free in this set. You don't have spare, you can have spare landers. For the most part, you're not going to have spare bodies unless you put effort into having spare bodies. It's very good with Dubious Delicacy. If you have the spare bodies, it's a great card. It's a 6. If you don't have it, it's a 3. It's just that simple. Blue has the one when it dies, draw a card. There's artifacts when you sacrifice them, draw a card. There's artifacts that you have just in play. It's a few creatures you want dead. If you have those, 1 mana kill anything is exactly what you want to be doing. It also triggers Void. It's a very good card in the right deck. You just don't want it in every deck. I gave it a 4 average with a floor of 3, ceiling of 6, and its medium effort. It's usually going to be somewhere in between. This card is spicy. Faller's Faithful. 2 and a black for a 3/1 human wizard. When this creature enters, destroy up to 1 other target creature. If that creature wasn't dealt damage this turn, its controller draws 2 cards. So, if you attack your 1/1 into your opponent's 6/6, this will kill it. If you just have to deal with your opponent's huge bomb, this will kill it and they'll get 2 cards. It's not great, but in an emergency, it's nice to have the option. This can mill them out very occasionally. It also just sacrifices a creature to draw 2 cards. A 3 mana 3/1 sacrifice a creature, draw 2 cards is already amazing. It's so powerful. And black and white and blue have excellent ways to blink this creature or pick it up and reuse it. It's so strong. This is one of the better black cards in the set. You do need creatures you want to sacrifice. But it turns out that the creatures you want to sacrifice are often also the small creatures you're willing to attack into your opponent's larger creatures to make this kill them. It's a relevant body. A 3/1 body attacks and trades up. It is hard for this card to not be what you need. It's so good. But I put this at a pretty low floor. You have to be a little careful. So I gave the Faller's Faithful an average of 6 with a floor of 4, ceiling of 7, and low effort. I don't think this is the best black card, but this is my favorite black card. Up next, Fell Graveship. 2 and a black for an artifact spacecraft. When this spacecraft enters, mill 3 cards and return a creature or spacecraft from your graveyard to your hand with station, and at 8+, it's got flying and lifelink. So I like this one a lot. The 3-mana spacecraft we talked earlier about how they're all a little bit stronger because they're more likely to just be crewed or in play. Milling 3 cards is something that can be worth a card a lot of the time. And recursion is valuable. Returning any creature or spacecraft is pretty nice. The lifelink is actually worth it here. One of the downsides to a lot of the spacecraft is you're giving up an offensive turn and a defensive turn when you tap creatures to station it, but the lifelink does help make up for that. The Gravediggers in this set are very good. Bell Graveship is one of them. So a vehicle or a spacecraft that is this small means that you're a lot more likely to get to crew it, and it does replace itself the same way that the green one does. So I gave it a 5 average with a floor of 3, ceiling of 6, and low effort. I want spacecraft. I think all the 3-mana spacecraft or less are very good. Up next is Graveblade Heavy. That is 3 and a black for a 3/4 human soldier. As long as you control an artifact, this creature gets +1/+0 and has Death Touch. It's pretty trivial. It's usually going to be a 4-mana 4/4 Death Touch. I just don't like your opponent having a window to kill it. And the Death Touch is not crazy relevant. It does matter, but the 4-drops are contested. So if you have to play this as a 4-drop, it's not going to feel like the end of the world, but you would much rather have some of the more powerful things available. I gave it a 3 average with a floor of 3, a ceiling of 4, and medium effort. It is big enough to battle with most things, and then it trades with the green stuff, but you would rather have removal spells or just stronger 4-drops in general. Our next card is Grab Kill, 3 and a black for an instant. Exile target creature or spacecraft. Simple, powerful, to the point. Being instant speed matters a lot. Exiling matters a lot. I'm happy to pay 4 mana to exile. There's a lot of recursion. The recursion of creatures I just don't want to deal with, and being instant speed instantly makes it better. There's just not a lot you have to do with this. It's very good in black. It's splashable in a lot of colors. And exiling is worth it. Being able to exile things is very cool. I love this art. It's so cool. This is a cool card and it feels cool. It's just bloop, little black hole sucks you in the end. So this religion in the story, they can take pills and the pills turn into a black hole. So they'll eat the pill and then eat a bunch of stuff that people want to have ascend, and then people are like, well, you might spaghettify and experience reality forever, unendingly in torment, or you might ascend to godhood. So, like, they create a literal scientific hell, and you either go into the literal scientific hell willingly or ascend to heaven. And scientifically, it's probably just hell. You are probably just aware that you're being torn apart for what is an eternity to you. That's a grab kill. All right, our next card is Grav Pack Monoist. That is 2 and a black for a 2/1 flying with when this creature dies, create a tapped 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token. Being tapped really does make it a lot worse, but a 2/1 flyer for 3 is something that you it's not really quite good enough. But the sack decks want it. It trades well, and it flies. Having a flyer is nice. A flyer that dies into a blocker is also nice. It doesn't block the turn it comes down. Being tapped really does hurt this. But it attacks, and you want things to sacrifice in black often enough that I'm pretty happy to play with this card. It's cool. I like it. The thing that would drop this to a 4 from a 5 is drones being strong. If there's enough good drones deck, then I'm no longer interested with the monoist. But I'm pretty happy with the 2/1 that dies into a body. I just want bodies. Soul Carver. 1 black mana for a 1/1 death touch artifact creature robot assassin. It's just fine in this set. There's no good way to pick up 2 creatures at the same time. If you could, it would get a little bit better. But the trading with anything is pretty nice, and there's not a lot of ways to punish Hole Carver to just ping a creature. So having a 1/1 that trades on demand is a valuable thing in this format for some decks, but not enough of them that I take it very high. But blue-black artifacts control is a thing, and it's always going to trade. There's not a lot of ways to punish a 1/1 in this format. A 1/1 without flying in this format, so I'm pretty happy to use it as a blocker early, and when I need 1-drops overall, it's fine. There's a lot of good ways to bite creatures in green, so I think this is a 5 in green-black, and possibly in blue-black, but I'm not so interested in it in white-black or red-black. I gave it a 4 with a floor of 4, ceiling of 5, and medium effort. Okay, our next card is Hilderblade. 1 black mana for an artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +3/+1. Equip cost is 4, but void at the beginning of your end step. If a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn, or a spell was warped this turn, attach this equipment to target creature you control. This is a cool card. So, this is always equipped to something, but on a delay in the void deck. The void deck is not guaranteed evasive creatures that you want to put this on, but just putting it on, like, it's really good with a lot of the incidentally kind of strong cards, like the Monoist. The Monoist, is really good with this card because you get to put it on the Monoist, you get to put it on the robot. So, but it is on such a delay, you really don't want to be paying 4 mana to equip this ever. It feels really bad. But +3/+1 is a real stat boost. It turns every single one of your creatures into a massive threat. This is great in black-white and great in red-black. It's pretty weak in both blue-black and green-black. This is a black-white or black-red card, and it's based on the evasion you have available. So the better your evasive creatures or your sacrifice creatures is really nice. Yeah, being only 1 mana is so strong. You can just slide this into play on one of your turns, and you get to equip it for free. You can like defensively sacrifice creatures. I love this thing, but it's difficult to play with, and you have to find the right deck for it. So I gave it a 4 overall with a floor of 3 and a ceiling of 5, and there's a very good chance I come back and bump this up. But being on your end step is a pretty big loss. It hurts it. Occasionally you'll pay 4 mana in, but not too often. Our next card is Hymn of the Faller. 1 in a black for a sorcery. Surveil 1, then you draw a card and lose 1 life. If a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn or a spell is warped this turn, draw another card. So 2 mana, Surveil 1, draw 2 cards, lose 1 life. Fantastic card. 2 mana, Surveil 1, draw a card, lose 1 life. Pretty bad. There's a big difference between 1 and 2 cards. We're assuming you can trigger Void, and then this card is great. 2 mana, draw 2 is so powerful. Like, that's a vintage card. You can play 2 mana draw 2 is good enough for vintage. 2 mana draw 2 is good enough for legacy. 2 mana draw 2 is good enough for modern. I actually don't think that's true anymore, but it used to be true. And you can do that in draft as well. So this loss of life does matter, but you do have to void. You really need to make sure your deck can void if you can play this. I gave it a 6 average with a floor of 4 and a ceiling of 6 and low effort. You have to be able to void to play with this card, and then you're pretty happy. I had it a little lower because I didn't know how much card draw was available. Like, black and blue have good card draw, but a lot of the other colors don't. Like, you can't really play it on turn 2. It's so good off the top. Late game, when I jump around this much, things get a revisit. All right, so Hymn of the Faller at 5 average, floor of 4, ceiling of 6, low effort with a note to revisit. Our next card is Insatiable Skittermaw. 2 in a black for a 2/2 with Menace and Void at the beginning of your end step. If a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn, or a spell is warped this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. A 3 mana 3/3 Menace is good, especially if it grows. A 3 mana 2/2 Menace is terrible. You really need to get the growth as quickly as possible. This is a 3 if you can't grow it very fast, but there's 2 drops that'll let you void. There's 2 drops that you want to attack and trade. And as an aside, you have to be very careful with your 2-drop in this format, because if your opponent attacks their 2-drop with 3 into your 2-drop with 3 untapped mana, you usually can't block just because of the void. This is a bad card that can be very good in the right deck as long as you're triggering void consistently, and you can trigger void on demand a few times, but not over and over again. So I gave Insatiable Skittermaw a 4 average with a floor of 3, ceiling of 5, medium effort. It's very rarely going to be a 5, so I might as well drop the ceiling, but it'll happen. Some of these decks just grind well. Up next is Lightless Evangel. 1 in a black for a 2/2 Vampire Cleric. Whenever you sacrifice another creature or artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. I guess some of the Monoists can survive having the black holes in them. So There's no evolving wilds in this set, but it does trigger on landers and everything else. It just needs some help. It doesn't need a lot of help. It just needs a little help. If it starts growing, it's going to grow out of hand really quickly. And there are a lot of creatures in black and red that just grow over time, so you don't need to pick them quite as high. This one does grow much faster than the others, but it's not significantly better than a lot of the other grow creatures. And I love that, like, you can attack this 2/2 into your opponent's 2/2 with a lander in play, and they can't block it, because you can sacrifice a lander. And sometimes, you'll just go full aristocrat, sacrifice 5 creatures, hit them for 7, and it'll feel great. I love that the aristocrat deck is good. So I gave it a 5 average, floor of 4, ceiling of 6, medium effort. Alright, our next card is Monoist Circuit Feeder. 4 black for a 4/4 artifact creature Nautilus with flying. When this creature enters, until end of turn, target creature you control gets +X/+O, and target creature an opponent controls gets -O/-X, where X is the number of lands you control. It's not ideal, but you can play this as a 6 mana 4/4 flyer with no other text. It's gonna work. It does always give something -O/-X. Because it is itself an artifact. But if you have 3 or 4 artifacts, this is a 6 mana 4/4 that enables an attack that hits for damage and kills something. So if you have a station in play, you can pump itself and station, or pump something else, station with both of them. You can and it'll kill something. You do want to be able to kill something with this. Yes, it is artifacts, not lands. But if you have one other artifact in play, you'd play a 6 mana 4/4 flyer that killed a 2-drop. You'd play a 6, and it can kill really big things. Black is good at having artifacts in play, and more importantly, good at blinking its creatures. So this will kill more than 1 creature per circuit feeder per game most of the time. It's very powerful and is one of the better black cards. It's what black wants to be curving into, whether you're control or void or whatever. If you don't have a ton of artifacts, it's going to play at that floor of a 5, but it's usually going to play near that ceiling of a 7, because even if you're not trying for artifacts, you'll get artifacts. So I gave it a 7 overall with a floor of 5, ceiling of 7, and low effort. All right, our next card is Monoist Sentry. 1 mana 4/1 defender. It's black for a 4/1 artifact creature robot with defender. This is a good way to station. You can station most spacecraft with this in 2 turns, and 2 copies will station a bunch. I do think you want to have some stations, or care about artifacts a lot. When you're done with it, it does trade up. It will usually kill something larger than it, because it's only 1 mana. So this is a great card if you're drawing a lot of cards, or if you're any kind of controlling and need to stall, or if you have any number of spacecraft. It's not archetype specific. I gave it a 4 average with a floor of 4 and a ceiling of 6. It combos with specific cards and is good in controlling decks. If you have those things, you want it. I love that, like, you get to play the Death Toucher and the Monoist Sentry together, and they are good together. But I like this more than the Death Toucher in general, but the Death Toucher is better in a lot of decks. This one just lets you do some explosive things. Peregrine Beckoners. This is one of the cards in that infinite combo here. All commons and uncommons, and you need 2 copies of this one. 4 and a black for a creature horror for 5. When this creature enters, until end of turn, another target creature you control gains +2/+0, and when this creature dies, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. Most sets have some variation of pump a creature, and when it dies, come back. The effect is always powerful, dependent on what ETBs you have. So this is a bad card if it's enabling an attack from like a 2/2. It's a great card if it's blinking your Monoist Circuit Feeder. But that's some work, because you need to be able to warp this in and have a sack outlet for whatever you're trying to blink with it. The infinite combo availability I did give it a whole bump on the ceiling because of that. But I only like this card if I have things I want to blink. If I don't have things I want to blink, I'm not really going to bother with this. Enabling 1 attack is nice, but when you have something you want to blink, dealing 2 extra damage and regaining an enter the battlefield effect is great. It's very powerful. And it's good again on turn 5. It does station for 6 on warp. it does let you station. You get to warp this, put the effect on something else, attack with that thing, or station something, then sacrifice it and get the end of the battlefield effect again. If you have a 2/2 in play and then a station on 3 mana, then on turn 4 you get to entirely station a spacecraft. Cool card, happy to play with it. I'll play the first one most of the time, and we'll see on the second or third. Our next card is Scrounge for Eternity. 2 and a black for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice an artifact or creature. Return target creature or spacecraft card with mana value 5 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, then create a lander token. The 5 or less is not as big of a restriction as you'd think, because there's not a lot of good 6+ mana creatures or spacecraft that I want to cheat into play with this. Overall, it's hard to assemble this. You need something you're willing to sacrifice. You need a mana value 5 card you want to reanimate in your graveyard, and you need to want the lander afterwards. But if all of those things are true, it's a lot of value for 1 card. If you have things you actively want to sacrifice, and good ways to mill yourself, and good ways to make a lander, then this is a solid card. I don't know why it's mana value 5 or less. I think sacrificing a creature to reanimate is totally on par with modern power levels, but I guess it was too good in testing. Kind of a weak reanimation spell for the amount of work you have to put into it, but if you're willing to put in that work, you can make it work a reasonable amount of the time. I gave it a 3 average with a floor of 3 and a ceiling of 7. High effort. If you have like good rare 5-drops, I'll play it. Caesarian Dirgecraft. 4 and a black for an artifact spacecraft. When this spacecraft enters, each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature with station. And at 7+ charge counters, it has flying. A lot of decks will not have something that they mind sacrificing. Like, they can't sack a token, but 5 mana for an edict is a lot. So you really have to be stationing this, and you have to put a lot of work into making sure it hits a relevant creature. It's really good if you have sweepers, and remember, just as a reminder, there are 7 sweepers in this format. So it's very good with sweepers as a follow-up, because you wipe the board, they play their 1 big threat, then you make them sack a creature. But overall, this is not the best station. Black has a lot of good ways to cheat a 7-cost station, so it is worth it a reasonable amount of time, especially if you're just grinding it out, but it's a weaker removal spell. I gave it a 4 average with a floor of 2 and a ceiling of 6. It will too often just take out your opponent's 1 or 2 drop or creature that they actively want dead, or that you've enchanted with something, and it's not a good enough body after you put 7 power into it of stationing that you're happy with it. Up next is Caesarian Voidborn. 2 and a black for a 2/2 vampire soldier. Whenever this creature, another creature or artifact you control dies, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life, and it has warp for 1. The size of the body matters. It will trade down with too many 2-drops in this format for me to be happy just playing it as a creature. But it's a real win condition. Aristocrats wants this card badly, and if you're trying to win with this effect, you can do it. You can make it happen pretty reliably. But if you're not doing the Aristocrats thing, then it's not as good. Aristocrats is when you sacrifice a creature, or an artifact in this case, in order to drain your opponent 1. And it's called that because the original, most popular version of the deck used Cartel Aristocrat and Falkenrath Aristocrat. So Aristocrats is now the name we tend to give to putting a bunch of creatures into play and then making them die to kill your opponent. So this being a bad card in a vacuum is actually good news for the Aristocrats deck. Because if this were a 3 mana 3/3 or a 2/3, or even a 1/3, it would be much better, and other decks would want it. So if you want to force the Aristocrats thing, you can get enough copies of this card to do it. This is also part of the Infinite Combo, which bumps it up a bit. But this is a good card in one deck, and it's very good in that deck. And the Aristocrats deck is not guaranteed to be black-white. So if you're black-white, this is a solid finisher. You play this, and it's a functional anthem. You get to attack with all your creatures. You don't care if they block. And in black-red, if you're warping enough, it'll still drain them a pretty reasonable amount. But the body size isn't big enough that you can do this unthinkingly. I love it. I think it's a really cool card in this set. All right, our next card is Swarmcaller. This is another one of those bad sack outlets. 3 and a black for a 2/4 insect warrior. Whenever this creature becomes tapped, you may sacrifice another creature or artifact. If you do, draw a card. Drawing a card is a powerful enough effect that you're willing to do okay things, like you're willing to sacrifice okay bodies when you need to dig, but being a 2/4 flying body is nice. That's a solid body. So you want to be doing the sacrifice thing. You want to have extra permanents to sacrifice, either because they already did their thing, or they're spare landers, or they recur. This is the best of the bad sack outlets. And when you're just trying to trigger Void, getting to draw a card while you do it is really nice. So I gave the Swarm Color a 4 average with a floor of 4 and a ceiling of 6, medium effort. It's very good in red-black, and it's good in general as long as I have things to sacrifice. I like it the most in red-black and blue-black, though. Blue-black has things that artifacts that I'm pretty happy to sacrifice. Our next card is Temporal Intervention. 2 and a black for a sorcery. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it. That player discards that card. This spell costs 2 less to cast if a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn, or a spell was warped this turn. I had to think about this one a lot. It's very awkward. 3 mana is too much for this effect. 1 mana is really great for this effect. So you need to be a control deck that triggers Void, and that's a difficult thing. The control decks don't want to do things on their own turn quite often enough to trigger Void for free, but when your deck's set up right, like if I attack my 2/2 into their 2/2 and then get to play another 2-drop and Temporal Intervention, it's going to feel very good. So I gave it a 3 average with a floor of 3, but the ceiling is all the way up there at a 6. I like this if I am good at triggering Void and a control deck, and I like this in my sideboard. I really love this out of the sideboard. This is a card you should look out for at your pre-release to put it into your sideboards. When your opponent's deck is just way too good, you get to play Temporal Intervention. But I gave it an average of 3 with a floor of 3 and a ceiling of 6. This one's cool. Timeline Color. Black for a 2/2 Drix Warlock with haste and warp. 1 black mana, pay 2 life, and you may cast this card from your graveyard using its warp ability. 2 mana, 2/2 haste. This is fine. Like, it's almost good enough. But you can warp more than once on this card in a turn, because you can warp it from your graveyard and then sacrifice it, and then warp it from your graveyard and then sacrifice it, and then warp it from your graveyard and then sacrifice it, or not, and then cast again later. And yes, that costs some life, but you can get the life. There's a lot of good life gain available. So Ranger says there are a lot of black pips on this card, and you are absolutely right. Black is a lot on a 2-drop. But mono black's a thing. Like, their colors are so dense and the artifacts are good enough that monocolored decks are something you will see. 2-colored decks are going to be the norm. Even in Sealed, you're going to see a lot of 2-colored decks. In a normal draft environment, if you're a 2-color deck, you're looking at dual land and then 8 swamps and 9 mountains in your black-red deck. But in this format, you're going to see a lot of 10 swamp, 7 forest decks, or 10 swamp, 7 mountain decks. And the mill potential is nice. This is a lot of value, even if it takes a long time, because you get to warp it from your graveyard for 2 life, and then cast it from warp, and eventually it'll become a real creature. But it's great in the sack decks. If I'm sacrificing this is what I want to be sacrificing. So I gave it an average value of 5 with a floor of 3, ceiling of 6, and medium effort. You can warp this on turn 1. On turn 1, you can warp from your hand, attack them for 2, both go to 18, and then you'll have a 2-drop as well, put them to 16. So this is a great card in a very aggressive black deck, but it's solid in a more controlling black deck or a mid-range black deck. This is a good mid-range black card. I like it a lot. All right, Tragic Trajectory. 1 black mana for a sorcery. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. And Void, that creature gets -10/-10 until end of turn. And instead, if a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn or a spell was warped this turn. So this is a powerful and efficient removal spell. Sorcery speed is a little bit of a knock, but you get to play this on turn 1 or turn 2, and on turn 5 or turn 6, you're going to get to double spell. You can play this with 2 different cards, because it's not your own permanence for Void, it's any permanent, your opponent or yours. So if they have chump block, or if you have a different kill spell, you can still trigger the Void on this and kill 2 creatures. It's very strong as a removal spell. It's 1 black mana, kill a small thing because you need to on turn 1 or turn 2, and then late game, kill anything. Kill spells are powerful void enablers, it's true. It's a strong card. It's a Tragic Slip reference, which is an old card. Target creature gets -1/-1, and then Morbid, if a creature died this turn, gets -13/-13 instead. This card might be better than a 5 just with the amount of card draw black has. Deck draws enough cards, 1 mana kill anything spells go up in value a lot. All right, Umbral Caller Zealot, we talked about this a little bit earlier. Black colorless for a 3/2 human cleric with sacrifice another creature or artifact, surveil 1. This is the only repeatable free sacrifice out. It's not time restricted. You can just sacrifice as much as you need whenever you want. Surveil 1 lets you dig really hard, lets you fill up your graveyard. It's very good. And that's on top of being a 2 mana 3/2, which is above rate. It's part of an infinite combo, which we talked about earlier. It enables so much. It makes it incredibly difficult to use removal on you, and it digs for what you need. This is an incredibly strong black card, even if it's a little bit fragile itself. I gave it a 6 average with a floor of 5 and a ceiling of 7. Virus Beetle is back. So this is a Neon Dynasty card originally. Virus Beetle, 1 and a black for a 1/1 artifact creature insect. When this creature enters, each opponent discards a card. In Neon Dynasty, this is one of the scariest and most powerful cards available because of ninjas. In this set, it's a lot harder to blink it, but it's not impossible. Your opponent is also less likely to have cards in hand than in Neon Dynasty, but being an artifact is relevant, and being a 2-for-1 inherently is relevant. So it's a solid card. It doesn't go into every deck, and it's not better than your other 2-drops in every deck, but when it's good, it's going to feel very good, and I love it in blue-black or black-red. This is a card that takes the card when it comes in and is then convenient fodder later. I gave it a 4 average with a floor of 4, ceiling of 5, and a medium effort. Just takes a little bit of effort to get it up to that 5. Ooh, Void Forged Titan. Here's a good void payoff. 4 and a black for a 5/4 artifact creature robot warrior. Void at the beginning of your end step. If a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn, or a spell was warped this turn, you draw a card and lose 1 life. This is a lot of card advantage. It builds up very quickly, and your opponent kind of has to deal with it right away. Even if they dealt with it right away, it still generated a card for just 1 life. This is very strong. It's so hard to not let void happen. If you're attacking me, my options are take damage or enable void, whether I'm killing your creature or killing mine. And in a dedicated sacrifice deck, there are just so many good ways to just trigger for free. Like, I might draw 2 cards for sacrificing a Virus Beetle that already did its job because Void Forged Titan. So I gave it a 6 average with a floor of 4 and a ceiling of 7. Medium effort on the Titan. And then our last black card is our Among Us reference. Vote out 3 and a black for a sorcery with Convoke. Destroy target creature. 4 mana destroy target creature sorcery speed is kind of weak. 2 mana destroy target creature at sorcery speed is pretty great. If I warp a creature, then that reduces the cost of my vote out by 1 this turn. It is a little bit of a non-vote with a lot of the spacecraft, and your fail case of paying 4 mana to destroy target creature is not the worst. But when you get to tap 3 creatures or 4 creatures, it'll feel like cheating. And I like that about Vote Out. I gave it a 5 average, 4 floor, ceiling of 6, medium effort required. I like this one. It's a good removal spell. I'm happy to cheat it out ahead of schedule a bit. So that's going to be it for the black cards. We're going to move on to red next, and finally white. Thank you all so much for hanging out.